What's the matter? All right, welcome back to another Chalk Talk here with me, Jason, Calcareous. And what are we doing these days? Oh, we're putting out the Summer Wine Club. And I've been promising to make little tasting videos for everyone and all these new wines that we're putting out with the nice start, cracking corks, because I'm so excited to get into this bottle. But today we're going to taste a very special bottle. Something I alluded to in the previous one, these 2019s. I love the 2019 vintage. I don't know how to more clearly state this. I think these wines are incredible. Not just my wines, not just Calcareous wines, but through the whole Pastorals region. This right here, 2019 Trey Violet. Let's see if we can get out a little better lighting there. You can see we got 40 Mourvèdre, 32 Grenache, 28 Syrah. So this is our Mourvèdre, Grenache, and Syrah blend. And if you've noticed, you've been a wine club member for a while, or you know us through Trey Violets, the Trey Violets changed a lot, and it's kind of an intentional change on my part. Some of it's just through me, and some of it's through the Vineyard. But one thing that sometimes bothers me about proprietary name blends here, not just in Paso, but anywhere, is that I myself have a hard time tasting the difference between a lot of the blends, especially if it's, let's say, a Rhone blend from a state fruit. And I just feel it's like the winery could have just had 2,000 cases worth of wine, and then every 500 cases, like, hey, change the label, a new funky name to it. And the reasons for that is not just what I'm saying, that it's some type of scam. The biggest reason is what I always say, is the Vineyard speaks way louder than the winemaker. As much as us winemakers like to act like we are important or know what we're doing or use big words, whatever, the Vineyard speaks way louder than any of our cellar tricks. So if you're going to have a Rhone-based wine, like a Syrah-based with a blend, a little bit of Mourvèdre here, Grenache there, Tannat there, Cinsault here, whatever, Viognier, throw it in, it's going to taste very, very similar, each of those different blends, because one, Syrah is such a big, bold, heavy wine. It speaks loud in a blend. And again, your estate fruit tastes like your estate. If you do it correctly, you just let your fruit do its job and stay back. It's going to taste like your estate. So they used to kind of bother me when times I would use too much Syrah in the Trey Violet, and I myself would have trouble like, oh, is this the Devil's Canyon or is this the Trey Violet? I really wanted the Trey Violet to be a little more elegant. Show off Grenache and Mourvèdre. And starting around 2017, our new blends from the estate, new plantings of Grenache and Mourvèdre came online, and some new Syrah came online, and it kind of changed what was available to me as far as making the wine. And two, I think, frankly, I've gotten better at making Grenache and Mourvèdre. I think, when you're first learning an estate, learning to make wines, it's easier to just make a really good Syrah because it's such a strong wine. And then you kind of maybe use those same tricks with Grenache, Mourvèdre of long macerations, trying to make it big and rich and weighty. But that doesn't always work with Grenache, and I personally don't like Grenache that tastes like Syrah. I like Grenache that tastes like Grenache. And so I want it should be a little lighter in color than a Syrah, and it definitely should have different characteristics. To me, it should be able to be much more of a pairing wine than a straight Syrah. Sometimes straight Syrah is limited, and you're going to have a powerful dish that's going to be able to pair with a Syrah. It's certainly just like heavy meats, heavy cream sauces, things with a lot of fat and weight to them. Grenache and Mourvèdre, you should be able to broaden what's available to pair with that. And it's definitely been the goal and the direction I've headed. I'm not sure how good this iPad camera is. That looks pretty dark. And it is pretty dark. The 2019s are dark. These are weighty, rich wines, a lot of tannin. It's specific to the vintage. Probably the biggest challenge, which makes me most excited about these wines, which is why I'm like on the riding for these wines pretty hard, is that during veraison, which is when the green berries start the ripening process and slowly turn into red berries. Veraison, it's triggered by different climatic reasons for it to like start the process of changing and saying the vine saying, all right, it's time to start ripening it up. Some of that's just the temperature, some of it's the daylight hours and night hours, and things like that. Slightly changes every year. The daylight hour thing kind of is consistent, but the temperatures and how that influences the pace of the vine is unique to every vintage. And what happened in 2019 is veraison took forever, like months. Usually sometimes it's like 2 weeks that you go from a green berry, then all of a sudden you come back 2 weeks later, the whole cluster's purple. Some of the Syrah and some of the Grenache, it literally took 6-7 weeks. Sometimes with the Grenache, which was pretty picked fairly early in this, there were still some green berries in those clusters. So you got a couple options as a winemaker. One, just cry about it. Say it's an uneven ripening year. There's going to be some harshness. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's just a challenging vintage. Or you do what I do, and I got really excited about that because I hate monotone wines. My least favorite descriptor of wine, and it's usually used in a positive light by critics, is when they go, oh, this wine shows incredible purity. And purity to me is kind of boringness. It's just like, that's, sometimes you got a nice pure color and like, oh, that's minimalistically beautiful. But sometimes minimalism isn't the thing. Sometimes you want a little bit more going on. And that's what these wines are. There's a lot going on. And to me, it's because when I picked them, we had this range of ripeness level throughout the cluster itself. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to pick this section here, and then I'll pick this section here a little later, and I'll get this a little riper, this a little earlier. That's generally how you would try to play the game if you're trying to, get some different flavors. But this was literally cluster to cluster was different. And what's cool is we don't have like a laser beam with air power, scanning our grapes and kicking out any tiny little imperfection. That's not grape, it's not perfect, that grape's not perfect, only perfect grapes get through. You can spend a few $100,000 and get one of those fancy machines and get the whole bowl of caviar looking grapes. But again, purity, boring. You want some of that variety, you want, especially in a blend. It's a blend, come on. So I'm really excited about what we got in this wine, which is just a massive variety of flavors. Comes real apparent in the nose. Everything from the rich Syrah to slightly more herbaceousness, a little bit of funky meatiness. It's just everything you're looking for is going on in there. Not pure, it's clean. It's not like, I'm not saying there's, a bunch of funky, nasty stuff going on in here. It's not what I mean by not being pure. It's just wide. It's so wide in what it's putting off. Just the multi-layeredness of it is what I love. This is Calcareous. You've come here for Syrah. You come here for the Trey Violet. It's rich. It's still mouth coating. It's still got plenty of the umph, that our estate produces. But boy, is it just not just oh, here's the heavy weight and then just all the way through. I'm sure we'll be tasting Syrah tomorrow or the next day on the video, and that one's just woo, all the way through. It's Syrah, and this, when you get to that mid palate, there's an upfront mouth coating weight and richness, but then there's this really beautiful acidity that cuts in there, and then just starts all sorts of things. All sorts of things. You know, I'm getting away. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm personally getting away of throwing out a bunch of random flavors and fruit names and spice names as the way of tasting wine. I mean, there's those things in there and that you can describe and it helps you kind of get an idea. But generally with wine, I'm trying to just figure out where it's at as far as the overall texture and weight of the wine. How's this going to play on the table? How's it going to play with other wines? Is this going to be 1, 2, 3 glasses you're going to be able to handle? You know, those type of things are a little more important than just it's got, you know, Bing cherry in it. And again, something that's happened starting in 2018. So this is the second vintage of using our big 1,000-gallon wooden tanks that these are aging in. It's getting that nice, subtle, oak-aged richness and weight to it, but without, again, over oakiness. You know, there's not a lot, especially on that nose. We are not getting a lot of oak. I mean, what am I about like 20% new oak on this. It's a mix. I've used a lot of neutral puncheons, which are the 500-liter barrels. I did do a little bit of this aged in new 228-liter. The Burgundy, you know, toasted new oak, new French oak barrels. To give it a little bit of, you know, it's like about 20% of those in there, just to give it a little bit more weight. And that's all the background. It's trying to pick up the mid palate. You know, I have, as this wine has gotten to be more Grenache and Mourvèdre based, to really make it stand out. I mean, that's when I talk about how I'm trying to not make this all just taste like Syrah, or like that we only make one wine with 7 different labels. Making this a Grenache and Mourvèdre based wine and lowering the amount of Syrah is really kind of making the Tre Violet kind of stand on its own. Enough so that this year, I think coming out in around Christmas time, you'll see in the Winter Club, there's going to be a new Rhone blend. That's kind of the middle. I think I went so far away from Syrah with this that it opened up a new ground to kind of hit something in between the Tre Violet and the Syrah. And that's a little secret project that's coming out in a few months for Wine Club members. But yeah, overall, probably one of my favorite Tre Violets that we've ever produced here. It's just the epitome of a blend, you know, just opening up, of getting as much going on in a glass as you can without it just being a mess. You know, sometimes it's like you know, Jackson Pollock with no skills at all. It's like, I'm a kid threw paint at the wall. You don't want that. You want something that has a lot going on, but then you can still pick things out. You can still see the patterns. You can still enjoy it. And it's rare that it happens. So often when you have some moving parts like this, it spins out of control, and it's just kind of a confusing drink, and things are a little, you know, inconsistent. The acidity's a little off, and the weight's off, but this one just zings all together, and I could not be happier with the 2019 Tre Violet. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the new direction that it's kind of going of it being a lighter wine. As far as just nozzle over the top, not having the finish that goes for years. It's a little cleaner on that backside, so you can enjoy food and just enjoy this bottle, because we couldn't be happier about it, and I'm just excited for it to finally get out there to the wine club. I've been waiting a while with this one in tank to finally get it in a bottle and finally get to share it. So, all right, until next time, take care.